in the late 1970s, on a quiet island off the coast of Canada, a man started building something in his backyard. Neighbors reported it looking like a UFO. Friends of the man said that he was brilliant, maybe a little too brilliant for his own good. And then one night, he left a note. He said that he had been contacted, and after that, nobody ever saw him again. This is the story of Granger Taylor, and the strange disappearance that still has people asking, did he lose himself chasing a dream? Or just maybe, did he actually find what he was looking for? To understand what happened to Granger, you have to understand who he actually was. Granger Taylor was born in 1948 in British Columbia, and grew up in a quiet, wooded area just outside the town of Duncan. He was described by his peers as unusually quiet and shy, but brilliant in a way that was hard to pinpoint. By the age of 14, Granger had already built a single-cylinder car engine, and by 17, he'd rebuilt a fully functional steam locomotive, something that most trained professionals would struggle figuring out. Engines, radios, machines, it didn't matter. He could take them apart and rebuild them without a manual. It was like his brain was wired for creation. Darren Mans, a friend of Granger's, was quoted saying, "Most of the stuff Granger knew was self-taught or God-given talent, or he was just a mechanical genius as far as being able to look at something, figure out how it worked, take it apart, and make it work again." He was also very notably infatuated with outer space from a very young age. He dropped out of school early, not because he couldn't handle it, but because he didn't need it. His home quickly became his workshop, a graveyard of cars, old trucks, spare parts, and half-finished projects. Eventually, everyone in his small town knew Granger. He was greatly loved by everyone in the town, being able to fix just about anything that he came into contact with. But beneath all that genius, there's a quiet curiosity to him about something bigger, a fascination that would slowly start to consume him. Granger started looking up, to the sky. He began reading everything he could find about UFOs, ancient technology, and aliens. And in his small crowded...
As this very slow-moving and misty light anomaly hovers over me, I feel something, and you can even see me react right as this anomaly passes over my head.
And in his small crowded workshop, he began working on something nobody expected. A spaceship. The spaceship wasn't just a toy. Granger spent months gathering materials like scrap metal, old satellite parts, and old airplane components. He didn't have any blueprints or schematics or any visual plan for what he wanted to create. He just knew what he wanted it to look like. Eventually, his project began to take shape in the woods behind his house. Reported as roughly 20 feet wide, complete with a circular door and a couch where he could sit. He even added a wood stove because, as his friends put it, if you're gonna talk to aliens, you might as well be warm. The spaceship was not remotely capable of flight based on any of its components, but I guess according to Granger's plan, it didn't need to be. He called it his spacecraft. It was where he went to be alone, to think, and eventually, to listen. His friends began to notice he was acting differently. Granger began to talk more seriously about extraterrestrials. Not in a fan or nerdy way like he used to, but like a believer. He began to tell them that he'd been receiving messages, not through the radio or through a dream, but telepathically. At first, this was taken as a joke, but Granger was calm. He said that they had chosen him, because he understood technology in a way that most humans couldn't. He said that the aliens were going to teach him about energy, a kind that could eliminate the need for fossil fuels entirely. His friends and family brushed this off, but by late 1980, something shifted. Granger began to tell people that the aliens were almost ready, that he'd soon be going on a trip, and on the night of November 29th, 1980, that trip began. Or at least that's when the story ends, because that was the night that Granger Taylor disappeared. Granger left behind a note, handwritten, and placed on his parents' door. It read, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship, as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you, as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger." Alongside the note, police found a map, one that roughly led to a mountainous area near Mount Prevost, not far from his home. That night, Granger took his pickup truck, his wallet, his keys, and he drove into the storm. It was one of the worst storms Vancouver Island had seen in years. Power lines went down, trees blocked roads, visibility was near zero. Some people said that it was the perfect cover, like he chose the night on purpose. Others said that it was just a coincidence. Either way, nobody ever saw him again. The next morning, the truck was gone, Granger was gone, and all that remained was the note. A final goodbye that didn't sound like one. Nobody believed that Granger had actually gone to space. Not his friends, his family, the townspeople, nobody. But what they did believe is that Granger thought that he had went to space. Or at least that he tried. The search for Granger Taylor began almost immediately. His parents reported him missing the next morning, and soon after, the local police began combing over the area, focusing first on Mount Provost, the place that he had highlighted on his map. But again, because of the storm that night, roads were blocked, trees were uprooted, and entire areas were inaccessible. Search dogs, helicopters, and even friends started looking for him. They found no tire marks, no footprints, nothing. For months, there was no leads on his disappearance. That was until about 4 years later, in 1984, when they found something. Deep in the forest near the mountain, a logger stumbled across a rusted truck, barely recognizable, shattered and overgrown. Nearby, there were small fragments of human bone, and inside the truck there were sticks of dynamite, some of which had been clearly detonated. And to top it all off, the license plate matched Granger's truck. And just like that, the mystery had a body, or at least what was left of one. But this discovery really only raised more questions than it answered. Why drive out there in the middle of the storm? What was the point of the UFO? And most of all, what exactly was he planning on doing that night? After Granger's truck was discovered, most people thought the mystery was over. A note, a storm, an explosion, a body. But if you asked people who actually knew Granger, it just didn't feel that simple. The man they knew wasn't suicidal. He wasn't depressed or lost or running away from something. He was chasing something. The first theory is the one that most people settle on, that Granger Taylor took his own life. The note reads like a farewell, the dynamite proves intent, and his truck, or what was left of it, seemed to close the case. But even if it was suicide, it doesn't fit the mold of despair. It feels more like a ritual of some kind. The language he used was just off. I am leaving on an interstellar voyage, and I am leaving behind all my possessions to you. Like he wasn't saying goodbye to life. He was saying goodbye to Earth. It's possible that Granger saw death as a transformation. Maybe to him that explosion was
ascension,
a way to depart the only way that he could. According to some sources, his friends even said that he'd been experimenting with ways to transfer consciousness, reading about theoretical physics and energy preservation. Maybe he thought that in death, he can continue somewhere else. Now obviously that's not rational, but grief rarely is. The second theory, the one that made Granger famous, and my personal favorite, is that he actually made contact. That the night of the storm, when thunder rolled over Vancouver Island and the power flickered out across town, Granger met with whoever, or whatever, had been speaking to him. The missing dynamite talked about in Granger's truck wasn't added to official police reports until years later. The truck that they found was reportedly blue, when Granger's truck was actually pink, and some even said that the license plate of the truck that was found didn't actually match that of Granger's, making this some kind of government or police conspiracy. His friend Keller was quoted saying, "He wasn't a nut. He was a very, very intelligent man who carried on with his life normally. But after you say spaceman, then all of a sudden he becomes a nut." Some locals swear that they saw strange lights over Mount Provost that night. Blue and white flashes, silent, just hovering over the trees. Others claimed that they had heard a low humming, like a generator, except there's no electricity out there. Then there's the weirdest part. Radio interference. Around the same time that he had vanished, several amateur radio operators on the island reported brief bursts of static and voices cutting across frequencies. One described it as a man's voice, calm, talking about departure. No recording of any of this exists, it's all just word of mouth, but that's how all legends start. And when you look at the timing, the storm, the note, the silence afterward, it all fits almost too well. People who knew Granger said that he wasn't just interested in UFOs. He was convinced that they were watching us, that they understood something we didn't. Maybe he thought that they could show him the truth. And maybe, on that stormy night, they did. The third theory is the most grounded, and maybe the most tragic. Granger was a mechanic and an engineer. He had worked with dynamite before, often using it to remove tree stumps or scrap large machinery. And if you've ever worked with explosives, you know just how unpredictable they can be, especially during a large storm like the one that was present that night. Some people think that he went up to Mount Provost to test something, like an experiment gone wrong, or maybe just one last big project similar to the UFO. He might have brought the dynamite out as a part of the experiment. The rain, the lightning, the isolation, it's not hard to imagine a single mistake leading to catastrophe. And then, all that was left were fragments. A mystery, born not from aliens, but from tragedy. But there's one more theory that doesn't try to explain what happened, but rather what it meant. Some people think that Granger Taylor became a myth on purpose, that he left behind something to believe in, a story too strange to let die. Maybe he knew that by vanishing the way he did, he'd become immortal in his own way, a name whispered in UFO circles, discussed decades later on forums, and now in videos like this one. Maybe that was his plan all along, and if it was, in a way, it worked. Granger wasn't very popular growing up, as shy as he was, and maybe this was his way of getting the attention that he always wanted. Because today, nearly half a century later, Granger Taylor still really hasn't disappeared. He's out there, in our curiosity, our fascination with the unknown, and in the quiet wonder of anyone who's ever looked up in the sky and thought, what if he really did go? This story's fascinated me just because of how much is left to the imagination. Whether you see him as a tragic genius, a dreamer lost to obsession, or the first man to truly leave this planet, the story of Granger Taylor isn't just about aliens. It's about the kind of mind that can't stop asking, what if? The kind of curiosity that makes us build, explore, and sometimes disappear. Thank you for watching. I'm Queasy, and I'll see you in the next one.